Hey everybody, and welcome back to Ready Steady Play, where we've just received our invitation to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. I mean, in my dreams. That's happened. In real life, what happened was I got the expansion for Hogwarts Battle. This is the cooperative deck building game from USAopoly, and this is the core set, Harry Potter Hogwarts Battle. This is Harry Potter Hogwarts Battle, the Monster Box of Monsters expansion set for Harry Potter Hogwarts Battle, a cooperative deck building game. If you are unfamiliar with what this is, it's a deck building game and it's cooperative, and you are taking on the roles of the plucky main characters from Harry Potter. You know, Ron, Hermione, Harry, and of course the quintessential wizard himself, Neville Longbottom. And in the game you'll be building decks of Hogwarts cards and battling wizards. The objective is to defeat all of the dark wizards before they can take control of a number of location cards and win the game. So it's really a race against time. There are 7 boxes within Harry Potter Hogwarts Battle, and each of the 7 boxes contains more mysteries for you to uncover as you open them up. And what happens as well is the game gets increasingly difficult until you get to game number 7, which is really difficult. But if you were tired of playing game 7 over and over again, then the Monster Box of Monsters adds 4 new boxes, which all promise to be roughly the same difficulty as games sort of 6 and 7. So now there's more games for you to lose at. But I feel like I may be jumping the gun. Let's get to the setup. I'll talk you through the very basics of how to set up the game if you are playing with our game number 1 from the core set. Then I'll talk you through some of the other essential mechanics that are added in the subsequent boxes. So if you don't want any spoilers about what's in those boxes, don't watch those parts of the video. But don't worry, because I'll put in a little title card so you'll know when they're coming up and you can skip them or turn it off. Then I'll talk a bit at the end about what this adds and the new mechanics insofar as I can. In the Harry Potter core set, we have one board which is represented by the Marauders map. And I've actually gone through and I've opened up all of these boxes and I've gotten to year number 7. So I will have in the back of my rulebook all of the mini rulebooks that come in those box expansions. And those explain all of the rules. You can of course download them from USAopoly's website if you want to get a sneak peek. But if you want to avoid spoilers, then this I will go through game 1 here now, how to set up game 1, and then you probably just want to turn off this video after that. So here is the Hogwarts Battleground. So I have here in front of me everything you'll get in game 1 of the core set of Harry Potter Hogwarts Battle. And what you get is 4 characters, 1 deck of Hogwarts cards, 1 deck of Dark Arts cards, locations, villains, influence tokens, fighty magic tokens, villain tokens, and these character boards and health trackers as well. These are the villains from game 1. You'll notice that all of the cards that come in the game 1 set have game 1 written here at the top. The game is for 2 to 4 players, but it could very easily be played solo mode with a couple of decks if that's how you wanted to do it. All of our heroes start off in their game 1 form. These ones have flavor text on the bottom, and it says here on the Hermione card, "Now if you two don't mind, I'm going to bed before either of you come up with another clever idea to get us killed. Or worse, expelled." And she has a deck of cards. You can see here the Hermione starter deck. They say game 1 up the top here. This is Alohomora, and it says her name on the bottom, Hermione, so you know that this is Hermione's starting card. It just says gain 1 influence on it. Now, there's 7 Alohomora cards in her deck, and all of the characters have 7 Alohomora cards in their starting deck. You will start with the exact same deck of 10 cards at the beginning of every game. Doesn't matter how far in you are, whether it's game 7 or game 1. You will always start with 10 cards, which are 7 Alohomora cards and 3 cards that are unique to the character. Typically, this is 2 items and an ally. Hermione starts the game with her trusty cat Crookshanks as an ally. Now you know this is an ally card because it says ally and it's blue. And these give you different abilities. When you play Crookshanks, you can choose to gain a fighting magic or 2 hearts. You've also got Tales of Beedle the Bard here. This is an item. You can tell it's an item because it's yellow and it says item on it. Then it says choose one, gain 2 influence, or all heroes gain 1 influence. Finally, you've got the Time Turner here, which you'll remember is an item from the 3rd book, but apparently she gets it in game 1. And this allows you to put spells on top of your deck when you acquire them, which sort of saves you time because this is a deck builder. And these Alohamoras are spells, which you can tell because they're red and have spell written on them. So all of the characters start with the same kind of 10 deck setup. There's 3 cards. The 2 items and the ally are different, but the same 7 spells, the Alohamoras, which are used to buy more powerful cards, which are here in the Hogwarts deck. So the Hogwarts deck shows you more powerful cards. In here you can buy more powerful spells like Wingardium Leviosa. You can buy more powerful items like this Essence of Dittany, which is used for healing, or more powerful allies like Oliver Wood, the head of the Quidditch team. And they all have a cost listed on the bottom, which you pay in influence, which you will have gained using your Alohomora spells. Here we've got the Dark Arts cards. These represent bad things that will happen when you turn them over. So each game will have a number of locations which will be set based on the game you're playing. For example, here in game 1, you can see we've got 2 locations. This is Diagon Alley, location 1 of 2, and it says each turn reveal 1 Dark Arts card. It's also got spaces down here for those evil villain tokens we saw earlier, and you'll place the evil villain tokens on the locations as the influence of the evil villains increases there. If at the end of any player's turn this track is full, the location is lost and discarded. The fight then moves on to the next location. Here it's the Mirror of Erised, and this is the second location of 2 in game 1, and the same rules apply. In the rules and setup for game 1, you'll be instructed which villains to include. In this case, you will have Grab and Goyle, you'll have Dracoy, and you'll have Quirinus Quirrell. Now, these aren't really spoilers because you need to take these out and look at them for game 1 setup. But as the games progress, you'll add more and more villains to this deck of villain cards. In order for the good guys to win, they'll have to defeat all of these villains who have hit points on the bottom of the card using the fighty magic which they'll gain from playing Hogwarts cards and cards from their deck. If they gain enough fighty magic and defeat all 3 villains before the villains take over the 2 locations, then they'll win the game. However, if at any point the second location is discarded because the villain track has become full and it's the end of the player's turn, then the players will lose the game. So setup is very easy. Each player just picks a character that they want. So we'll play with Hermione and Neville. And they'll have their decks, their applicable decks. Other characters are just returned to the box or whatever you want to do with them. Each character will gain one of these player boards here, which has space on it for your fight magic and your influence. It also has a health tracker here and then a stun note here. So you can put your character card at the top here. And there's also a handy turn order tracker as well with the Hogwarts Express on it that we can add to that. We'll then shuffle our deck, our starting deck, and put it here. We'll take our hit points tracker and put it here. I'll shuffle the Dark Arts cards and stick them here on the Dark Arts section of the board. I'll set the locations up here. So in game 1, you are instructed to shuffle the villain deck, which is just 3 cards at this point, and place it face down on the board here. That can feel a little weird because Quirinus Quirrell should really be the last villain. So if you want to add a little flavor, I like to take him out, shuffle the other 2, and then put him back on the bottom so he's the last villain you face. But it's entirely up to you. The official rules say just shuffle all 3. Then take the Hogwarts deck of Hogwarts cards, shuffle that, and put that up here on the top of the Marauders map. So now you're pretty much set up to go with game 1. Each player will draw 5 cards. We will reveal the villain, and we'll put him down here. In this case, we're starting with Draco Malfoy. We'll also reveal 6 Hogwarts cards and put them like this. Wow, mostly spells. I seem to have gotten all the spells. So this is the starting marketplace of cards we can purchase and the starting villain here. And then we're ready to begin our turn. The first thing that happens in the player's turn order is that they must draw a Dark Arts card. They must draw a Dark Arts card equal to what it says here on the location. So Diagon Alley, we're lucky. We only draw one card. In the game 1, we only ever draw one card, but this could increase as we go through the games. So in this case, I've drawn Expulso. Expulso says that the active player loses 2 hearts. So I've started playing with Hermione as the active player, but you can decide whoever goes first. It's up to you to decide who you want to go first. But in this case, Hermione would lose 2 hearts, so I just note that on her health tracker here. Now, what I do is I check the villain's special abilities. Each villain has a special ability here on their card, and the special ability will have different effects depending on the hero. On Draco Malfoy, it says each time a villain token is added to the location, the active hero loses 2 hearts. Note that this is checked at this point, but not necessarily activated. So this ability applies no matter when the villain token is added to the location. The active player will always lose 2 hearts. However, some villain abilities have immediate effects that, for example, lose more hit points or take another Dark Arts card. Sorry, spoilers. These abilities would be checked and activated at this time. Because I haven't added a villain token to the location, Draco Malfoy does nothing at this time, so that means it's time for Hermione to progress with her turn. On her turn, she can play any number of cards from her hand. She can play all the cards from her hand if she wants, and every time she plays a card, she carries out its effect. In Game 1, it doesn't really matter the order in which you play the cards, because they're all fairly simple. Later on, it might become more important for you to play certain cards first, because they'll give you different effects. For example, draw some cards, discard others. You can't discard cards you've already played. However, that more complex play is left for later games of Harry Potter Hogwarts Battle. In this early Game 1 setup, it doesn't really matter. So I'll play 5 Alohamoras, I'll take 5 Influence, and add them here to my player board. Now, at the end of my turn, I will lose all Influence and Fight Magic on my player board. So I might as well spend it. In this case, I'll take 5. I'll spend them to buy Descendo. Descendo is a great spell, and it allows me to gain 2 Fight Magic. So I'll add that to my discard pile. Whenever you gain a card, unless it's otherwise stated, it's added into your discard pile. Then, as I'm done my turn, I'll take all of my cards and put them into my discard pile as well. Now, on my turn, I can basically take any of 3 actions. I can play cards, I can assign Fight Magic to the villains. This is actually becomes broader as the games progress. I can assign tokens to the villains, or I can buy cards here from the pool. I can take these actions any number of times in any order I want. It's entirely up to me how I sort of want to do it, how I want to distribute those tokens, how I want to, and when I want to play those cards. I can play some cards earlier on to gain an advantage if they give me more information that might influence my decisions later. Now that my turn is over, I will replenish the Hogwarts pool here, and I will take 5 new cards from my deck. If at any point I go to draw cards and the draw pile is empty, I draw as many as I can, and then I shuffle my discard pile and reset it, then drawing the missing number of cards. However, at this time, I don't need to do that, so I will just draw the remaining 5 cards, and then it will be Neville's turn. Note that tokens such as Influence gained on your turn and Fight Magic gained on your turn are only discarded at the end of your turn. Sometimes you'll have cards that allow your fellow wizards to add Fight Magic or Influence to their board. These tokens can then be retained and used on their turn. This is an advantage because it allows you to retain those tokens and for those wizards to use them on their turn to bolster whatever tokens they'll also gain from their hand. When an evil wizard is defeated, they're discarded into the discard pile. You will also immediately gain the reward on the card, so there can be some element of tactical timing to defeating the evil wizards. So once we've assigned enough Fight Magic to Draco Malfoy, in this case 6, he will then be defeated and discarded. The active wizard, whoever's turn it is, will gain the reward or enact the reward, for example, removing a villain token. And at the end of the round, when the Hogwarts card marketplace is replenished and a new hand is drawn, you will also reveal the next villain token, putting it face up on the board here. You will have noticed that on her turn, Hermione took 2 damage. When a wizard takes 10 damage, they are stunned. When one of the good guys is stunned, they must discard half of their hand rounded down. So if they have 5 cards in hand, they must discard 2 of them. Furthermore, they must discard any influence and fight tokens on their board, which means that if they've been given any by their friends or they've somehow gotten some between turns, those will all be lost. Any they've got from cards they've already played are also lost. It's possible to be stunned during your turn. Finally, and most importantly, a villain token is added to the location. Then the stunned player, if it is their turn, can continue their turn. If you're stunned on another player's turn, at the end of that player's turn, you'll go back up to 10 hit points. If you're stunned on your turn, you can still continue your turn playing any cards you have left in your hand, but you cannot gain or lose any more hearts. So any cards you have that heal you are less effective, but it also means that any further bad stuff that happens to you is also kind of negated. At the end of your turn, you then go back up to 10 hearts, and you'll draw 5 new cards. Villain tokens can be added to the location for any number of reasons. For example, dark arts cards like He Who Must Not Be Named. If at any point the track becomes full, then the location will be lost at the end of the active player's round, the tokens will be removed, and it'll be discarded. It can never be regained. Now the battle will continue here and end here for good or for worse. If a token would be added but the track is full, then a token is not added. This is an unusual moment of respite for the heroes. However, if they want to prevent the location from being taken at the end of their turn, they do need to find some way to remove at least 1 token from the location. There are a number of ways in which tokens can be removed from the location. Typically it's spells, but as we saw with Draco Malfoy, it can also be by defeating villains and stuff like that. So that's pretty much it for Game 1 of Harry Potter Hogwarts Battle. The other games add in some extra rules and mechanics and stuff like that, so I'm going to take a look at those. But if you don't want to know any more than the basics of the rules and how to play, that's pretty much it. By Game 7, the game is a lot more complex than this. A lot more complex. So if you saw this and you thought that's too simple, don't worry. The game actually recommends that experienced hobby gamers start on Game 3, but I suppose it's entirely up to you to determine that and who you're going to play with. So I'll probably jump straight to Game 3 and talk a little bit about what that adds. And then we'll probably just jump straight to Game 7. But what I'll do is I'll look at some of the mechanics that are added in the interim, maybe the ones that are sort of significantly different in terms of the way they change the game, and we'll end by looking at Box 1 of the Monster Box of Monsters. So now I've gone and opened up Box 2 and Box 3. And what this has given me is a whole bunch of new villains. It's given me a whole bunch of new Hogwarts cards and a whole bunch of new Dark Arts cards. I've got new Hogwarts cards here. I've got new Dark Arts cards here. I've got 2 new sets of locations. This is the Game 3 set, but I'll also have a set from Game 2. I've got the villains from Game 1. And what I've also got, so here are my Game 1 Dark Hogwarts cards. So that'll be added in there. These will go and be added here. Now all of this is shuffled together and combined. None of it is used in isolation, with the exception of the locations, which are always used in isolation of themselves. I set up the game in much the same way as I have done previously, with my Dark Arts cards set up here. My Hogwarts cards are going to be set up here. I'll have my locations in an order 1, 2, and 3 set up here. One thing that's important to note is that once we get past the Hogwarts Express location and we go into Hogsmeade Village, we will reveal 2 Dark Arts events per turn at the beginning of each player's turn instead of 1. So as we lose ground in this game, there's the Shrieking Shack, as we lose ground in this game, things will get more difficult. So trying to hold the first location becomes more important. I will also take all of the villains and shuffle them together. Now in this case I've still got the villains from Game 1, but I've also got villains from Game 3 like Peter Pettigrew and villains from Game 2 like the Basilisk. And so all of these villains will be shuffled together to make one uber villain deck, and we're going to have to defeat all of them. Now the other thing to note about the setup of the villains in Game 3 is that there'll be 2 active villains on the board at any given time. The villains go down here, and we flip over 2 villains to start. In this case, the Dementor and the Basilisk. I'm also going to flip over 6 Hogwarts cards, just as we did previously. Now, we've got these tokens here. These are for a spell. I can't remember the name of it. Petrificus Totilaris. I don't know. It stuns these enemies, and you put these tokens down on the enemies when they're stunned. But the spell these will only come into play if someone buys the card from the deck. So that's what those are for. There's various tokens like this. Actually, not many. There's only a few tokens like this that are added to the game as certain cards become present in the deck there. Final big change you'll notice about Game 3 is that it adds new hero cards. And these new hero cards show our heroes, who are a bit older now, but more importantly, we've all got an ability. For example, Hermione's ability reads, if you play 4 or more spells on your turn, 1 hero gains an influence. So this is cool because you can pick to gain it yourself to supplement your income, but if you don't need any more influence or you can't buy any cool cards this turn, you can always give it to Neville. Remember how I talked about in the Game 1 setup how you could get cards not on your turn and hold them? So you can give it to Neville here, and he can have that on his turn, because he only discards tokens at the end of his turn, which is pretty useful. Once again, though, the premise is to get through the entire deck of villains, so we're going to be defeating these villains, putting them up there, and at the end of the round replacing them with new villains, working our way through the entire deck, trying to get there before we run out of these location cards. Those are the big changes for Game 3. So I'll be back in a minute to talk about some of the bigger changes that happen as the games progress. And if you don't want to see any more spoilers for that, now is the time to tune out. Hey everybody, and welcome back to Harry Potter Hogwarts Battle Game 4. So, in Game 4, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be starting out with some new cards. We've got some more Hogwarts cards to add into the deck here. We've got some new Dark Arts cards here as well. We've got 3 brand new locations right here. And we've got 2 new villains as well. We've got a Death Eater and Barty Crouch Jr. But other than that, not a whole lot is going to change. But what we have got is these exciting house dice right here. 1 for each Hogwarts house. So the house dice show the same sort of symbols on every side. You've got 4 symbols on each die. You've got this card symbol, an influence symbol, a fighting magic symbol, and a heart symbol. And when the dice are rolled, all heroes get to take 1 beneficial bonus action. So when a heart is rolled, every hero heals a heart. When an influence is rolled, every hero gains an influence. When a fighting magic is rolled, every hero gains one of the fighting magic icons. And when this is rolled, every hero gets to draw a Hogwarts card. Each die has 3 symbols of a specific type, denoting that they're slightly better at one thing. For example, the Gryffindor die here has 3 influence symbols because it's slightly better at influence than the other dice. The Hufflepuff die is slightly better at healing. The Ravenclaw die is slightly better at card draw. And you guessed it, the Slytherin die is slightly better at fighting. These die will be rolled when you access certain Hogwarts cards. For example, we've got here the Cedric Diggory card, which allows you to roll the Hufflepuff die. We've got Pomona Sprout, same effect. What we've got here is Hogwarts A History. This allows you to choose any 1 die and roll it. What we've also got is this Heir of Slytherin card, which is a new Dark Arts card. This has you roll the Slytherin die and a bad effect occurs. So you don't get the bonus, so when you roll this Slytherin die, you're not going to gain the bonus effect that you would get if you'd rolled it. Instead, you're going to have a penalty based on what it says here on this Dark Arts card. So I'll take the Game 4 Dark Arts cards and shuffle them in with the Dark Arts there. I'll take the new Hogwarts cards, I'll shuffle them in with the Hogwarts deck here. So I'm going to take the villains and add them to the villain deck. That's right, we just have to fight all the villains from 4 games now. You know, we don't get to take any of the villains out. We have to get through all of these villains. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 villains. And I'll take the locations, which are much the same as the previous locations we've seen. However, the graveyard here has a special effect. It just says, when this location is revealed, all heroes discard an ally. So that just happens once when the location is revealed. All heroes will discard an ally, and then the game will proceed as normal. That's only if you've got one in your hand. So I set that up. We're still dealing with 2 villains here, so we'll reveal 2 random villains, and we'll reveal 6 of our Hogwarts cards, and then the game is ready to go as per the normal format. So the big change in Game 5, there's only one big change in Game 5, is Lord Voldemort. Of course, I've got more Hogwarts cards that I've added to the Hogwarts deck. I've got more Dark Arts cards added to the Dark Arts deck. More villains to add to the villain deck. But the big change is Lord Voldemort. So when we're setting our Game 5 villain deck, we'll set it up as normal, shuffling all of our villains together. But when we're done shuffling all of the villain cards together, we'll take our Lord Voldemort card here and we'll put it face up on the bottom of the deck. Notice that it says here, Voldemort may not be assigned fighty magic until all other villains are defeated. So he's going face up on the bottom of the deck, like this. During setup, I'll put the villain deck here, and I'll reveal 3 villains. From this point forward, we'll be fighting 3 villains at the same time, which is pretty tough. But if you think that's tough, if we should be lucky enough to defeat all of these villains, going through 3 at a time, replacing them at the end of every round as they're defeated, there will come a point towards the end of the game where we are in fact fighting 4 villains at once, because when we get to the bottom of that deck, our Lord Voldemort card will be sitting there face up. Lord Voldemort's ability will become in effect the minute he's revealed and remain in effect until he's defeated. We will then have to defeat the remaining villains face up on the table before we can start assigning fight magic to Lord Voldemort. Once these 3 are all defeated, Lord Voldemort will drop down here, and then we can fight him as normal. If we defeat him, we win the game. But as normal, if they capture all 3 locations, we lose the game. So welcome back to Game 6. Game 6 has a couple of changes, but nothing too drastic. There's one big change, which we'll look at in a minute. We've got our new locations here, Nocturne Alley, the Burrow, and Astronomy Tower. It says when this location is revealed, all heroes discard an item. You'll also notice that by the time we get to Astronomy Tower, there's now 3 Dark Arts cards coming out per turn, which is pretty bad. Then we've got all of our villain cards somewhere here. I've got Game 6 Lord Voldemort, who's like Game 5 Lord Voldemort, only more difficult. So I'm going to shuffle all of the villains together, and I will put new Lord Voldemort face up underneath the villain deck. New Lord Voldemort has a different ability to Old Lord Voldemort. Old Lord Voldemort's ability said the active hero loses a heart and discards a card. New Lord Voldemort says roll the Slytherin die, and then the following things happen. It's basically Heir of Slytherin, but you have to do it every turn. Note that you still can't defeat him until the others are defeated, and his ability comes into effect the minute he's revealed, just like the old one. So I'll put Lord Voldemort on the bottom of the deck. As in Game 5, we'll be fighting 3 villains at a time. The big change are these proficiencies. Finally, we've learned something from the school, and now we're ready to use it. These are our new wizarding proficiencies, and they represent the classes we take at the school. And each one basically gives us a new special ability. So we should have a look through this deck, find a special ability we like the look of, that we want to have on our character. If I'm going to take Transfiguration for Hermione, I will discard my turn order card. I guess I can keep it around on the table somewhere, but I don't need that anymore. Now I'll take Transfiguration and put it here. This is my new ability. I now have 2 abilities to help me out. Is that going to be enough to get me through Game 6? I really don't know. But if you thought that was bad, let's have a look at what happens in Game 7. Hello, and welcome back to Game 7 of Harry Potter Hogwarts Battle. So by now, pretty much the entire game is in full swing. We've got all of the mechanics in play. We've got our special abilities here. I forgot to give one to Neville. Neville obviously has Herbology. So We've got our special abilities. We've got the Hogwarts dice out here as well. We've got the full villain ensemble. Now we've got our Game 7 locations here. We've got 4 locations in Game 7. Godric's Hollow. We've got Gringotts. The Room of Requirement. And finally Hogwarts Castle with 3 dark arts events on it. There's also special effects that come into effect here. When it's revealed, all heroes lose 2 hearts. And when a hero may discard 5 fight magic to remove 1 villain token from this location. We've also got Game 7 Voldemort. So he replaces Game 6 Voldemort, who replaced Game 5 Voldemort, but it's the same deal. Obviously now he's got more hit points. It also says add 1 villain token to the location. Each time a villain token is removed from location, all heroes lose a heart. And he may not be assigned fight tokens just like the others until all of his minions are defeated. So I'll take my 4 Game 7 locations and I'll put them up here. I'll take my Lord Voldemort. I'll shuffle my villain deck with all of the villains now in the game on it. I will put Lord Voldemort on the bottom of the deck face up. And now I've got something else to deal with. Horcruxes are bad news. You cannot assign fighting magic to Game 7 Voldemort until all 6 Horcruxes have been destroyed. Now, this is the diary. It's the first Horcrux. It says, each time a hero plays an ally, you lose a heart. That effect is in play and continues to affect gameplay until this Horcrux is destroyed. To destroy, assign a heart or a book. What that means is you have to acquire cards that allow you to roll the house dice, like Hogwarts A History, or the ally McGonagall, or Snape, who lets you roll the Slytherin die, whatever. Once you play that card, you roll the die just as you normally would, and then once it's been rolled, you may decide either to take that effect for your team, which has its normal effect, so everyone will draw a card, or you can assign one of these tokens to the Horcrux, and that means that this Horcrux is now being destroyed because it needs one of these 2 symbols. When the Horcrux is destroyed, the player who destroyed it gains the reward. Now it says here, if you play 2 or more allies, any one hero gains 2 hearts. This is an ongoing reward. So this card will be assigned to the hero that destroyed the Horcrux, and they will continue to gain the benefits of this for the rest of the game. As you go through them, you'll notice that the requirements to destroy them become more pronounced. For example, for the ring, you need fighting magic or influence, but for the cup, you need a heart and an influence. You'll need to roll 2 dice and get 2 separate symbols in order to destroy it. Once it's destroyed, the penalty on the card stops happening and you get the reward every time it would become applicable. So the Horcruxes are placed here in the center of the board, and as you make your way through the Horcruxes, you take them, you can just put them next to your player board or wherever you want to remind you of the reward on them. Don't forget to use that because you're going to need it to get through Game 7 of Harry Potter Hogwarts Battle. Now, if all of that seems too easy to you, don't worry, because here comes the Monster Box of Monsters to add more content. So I'm going to talk you through now what happens with Box 1 of the Monster Box of Monsters. So, Box 1 of the Monster Box of Monsters comes with a bunch of new stuff for the game. The box sort of takes place in between, over the course of the first 3 films. So you've got elements from the Philosopher's Stone or Sorcerer's Stone. You've got stuff from the Chamber of Secrets and also stuff from the Prisoner of Azkaban. And one of the most important things you'll notice that it adds, it's a new type of adversary to fight called a creature. Now, some new adversaries are villain creatures and others are just creatures, and they can be overcome in different ways. So our Dementor and Basilisk from the original game are discarded. They're removed from the game for good. And they're replaced with the new Basilisk and Dementor creatures here. These are identical to the old ones in every way, except that they have the expansion symbol up here instead of the base set symbol, and they have this new type villain creature. So those will be shuffled into your villain deck as normal. You've also got here a bunch of new creatures. These are just creatures and not villains. We've got Cornish Pixies, we've got Fluffy, we've got Norbert the Dragon, and we've got the Troll as well. Now, the interesting thing about Norbert is that he's defeated using influence instead of fighting magic. This is because we don't want to overcome him like the other villains. We just want to train him. We're trying to train him so that he doesn't murder us. You'll notice here it refers to detention cards. Uh-oh, that's a new thing too. Let's have a look at that in just a minute. So to overcome these new creatures, we've got new hero cards. And these hero cards kind of replace the game's 7 hero cards, so you're not using the heroes from the end of the movies to fight sort of stuff that comes up in the first 3 movies. But don't worry, because there's 4 boxes in the Monster Box of Monsters, so I'm sure they'll bring us back up to Book 7 or Game 7, period, in time. So here is Hermione Granger from Box 1 of the Monster Box of Monsters. She's sort of young again, but she's got a brand new ability, but it's kind of the same as her sort of previous ones, which involves her playing a bunch of spells and then good stuff happens. Here we've got Neville. And Neville's got the same kind of ability where when people get healed, more good stuff happens and things like that. We also get Care of Magical Creatures, a new proficiency. And this says whenever we assign a fight magic or a influence to a creature, a hero gains 2 hearts. And if a creature is defeated, we can remove 1 villain token from a location. So already we see we've got cards that play off this new villain type of creature. We've also got a new character, Luna. So we have here Luna Lovegood, new character. And the first time you draw an extra card on your turn, any one hero gains 2 hearts. Luna's got all the Alohamoras, plus she's got the Lion Hat, which allows her to gain an influence, and if another hero has a broom or Quidditch gear in their hand, gain a fight magic. We've got the Spectre Specs that reveal the top card of the Dark Arts deck, and we can choose to put it back or discard it, so that's kind of like a warning. And our ally here is the Crumplehorn Snorkack. Which is sort of similar to the other allies that players start with. So Luna's starting deck sort of interplays a little more with the other characters and combos with them in ways that they haven't done before. She's a little bit more high skill curve, I guess, but she's not that much higher, really. We've also got new Hogwarts and new Dark Arts cards. We've got the new Hogwarts cards. I won't go through all of the cards. I haven't been doing that. I think, you can discover them yourself as you play the game. But one that's worth noting is the harp, the magical harp from Book 1. And we can choose a creature that a creature's ability does not trigger until the start of the next turn. So this is much like the Petrificus spell that assigns these to villains. We can use this to assign the harp to creatures and villain creatures. Anything with the creature subtype can be assigned the harp, and then their ability doesn't trigger until next turn. One of the cool new things you get in this game is Tergio the Spell. It says, you may banish a card from your hand. If it's an item card, draw a card. So Banish is a new mechanic we didn't see in the core set. Banish is great. It's basically trash for those of you who are familiar with deck building games, but what it allows you to do is take a card from your deck, or in this case, it's got to be a card in your hand, but you can banish different cards at different points. But when you banish a card, you simply remove it from the game. So it helps you get cards out of your deck, cards you don't want in your deck, you can get rid of them. And you'll note that we've got a little Monster Box of Monsters expansion symbol here, which shows us it's from the expansion. But also it says Box 1 up here, which tells us this is Box 1 of the expansion. Then we've got the new Dark Arts cards, and these are sort of in sync with the Monster Box of Monsters, so it's stuff from the creatures that you find in the game. We've also got the Inquisitorial Squad. Active hero puts a detention in their hand, then all heroes lose a heart for every detention in their hand. So detention cards are an example of a card you don't want in your deck, and you'll want to banish these if you can or get them out some other way. But there's a whole big stack of detention cards here, and villain cards, creature cards, Dark Arts events will put these into your deck, and they'll sit there clogging it up. These are bad because they come up and you can't do anything with them. They have no positive effect, and it says if you discard this, lose 2 hearts. So that's when you discard it for any reason, like if a villain makes you discard a card, if you choose to discard this, you lose 2 hearts. It's not when you discard it from play at the end of your turn. But it's still really bad, and they're really annoying because they come up and they just cause all kinds of problems, clogging up your deck with detention cards. So I'll just take the detention cards and put them somewhere near the deck because those are bound to come up and cause me problems. When I gain a detention card, for whatever reason, it'll tell me what to do. For example, the Inquisitorial Squad puts it in my hand, but other effects put them in your discard pile. you'll be told where to put it. But if you're not told, just assume it goes in your discard pile. We also have 3 new locations. We've got the Castle Gates, Hagrid's Hut, and the Great Hall. They're not really anything different to the locations we've already seen, but they go up in terms of difficulty. So you've got 1 Dark Arts card, 2 Dark Arts cards, 3 Dark Arts cards, getting progressively more difficult as you lose the locations to the Dark Wizards. We've also got these. These are the big new thing from this expansion in terms of game mechanics. If you remember the Horcruxes from Game 7, these are essentially replacements for the Horcruxes. They're called encounters, and they do essentially the same thing, but they are events that you'll recognize from the books and the movies. You still put them down here, and you must complete them all in order to defeat Voldemort and win the game. This is the first encounter from box 1 of the Monster Box of Monsters. Pesky Pisky Pestronomy. This is from book 2, and this is in Gilderoy Lockhart's Defense Against the Dark Arts class, if you remember. The pixies get loose and cause havoc. And this says, at the end of each turn, if the active hero has 4 hearts or less, they only draw 4 cards instead of 5. So this effect will be in play until this card is gotten rid of, and that's really bad. To complete, play 2 cards with an even influence value in 1 turn. So you've got this little task down here you've got to do, and just like the Horcruxes, if you complete it, you get the reward. You'll put it next to your player board, and this reward will remain in effect for the rest of the game. Then once that's done, you'll move on to the next one, in this case, Students Out of Bed. Now there's a new effect. Each time you shuffle your deck, put a detention card in it first. That sucks. So this will help get detention cards into your deck whenever it's reset, and you want to get rid of that as soon as possible. Much like the Horcruxes, you're going to have to roll dice and get those tokens put out onto the card. In this case, you need a heart and a book. It says once per game, you may discard this. Then all heroes may banish a card in their hand or discard pile. So there's a way to banish those detention cards and get rid of them. Finally, we've got the 3rd floor corridor. Heroes do not collect rewards for defeating villains or creatures, which sucks. To complete, play 2 allies, 2 items, and 2 spells in 1 turn. That's a big ask because that's 6 cards, which means you're going to have a way to draw cards as well. It says once per game you may discard this, then collect the reward on the top of the villain or creature in the discard pile. So it lets you duplicate a villain reward card. So that pretty much covers all of the new stuff in the Monster Box of Monsters set. But let me just show you how to set up Box 1, the game. We'll take our new Hogwarts cards and we'll shuffle them into our existing Hogwarts deck, which is now getting enormous right here. We've got our new Dark Arts cards, so we'll shuffle those into our Dark Arts cards deck here. Then we'll take our events, our encounters, we'll put them down here. We've got our locations there. Now what we're going to do, each encounter has the name of a creature on it. So we're going to take those creatures and add them to the villain deck. So in this case, I've got Cornish Pixies, I've got Norbert and Troll, and I've got Fluffy as well. So those are fortunately the only creatures that come in box 1, other than the replacements for the existing creatures. So that's great. So I've been instructed to take the 4 creatures, add the 2 new villain creatures, that's the Dementor and the Basilisk. Then I take 5 more random villains from this deck, discard the rest of the villains. I'll shuffle these together. So this is, in here, 11 villain cards. Then I'm going to take game 5 Lord Voldemort, so the easiest of the Lord Voldemorts. I'll put him face up. I'll put the remaining ones on top of Lord Voldemort. I'll reveal them 3 face up. And now my heroes are ready to go. I've still got 11 villains to get through, plus Voldemort. If I'm lucky enough to succeed in that, I can go back here into the Monster Box of Monsters, where I'll find the remaining boxes ready to be opened and surprise me with further new additional content. But that hopefully will give you an overview of everything you can get from Hogwarts Battle, and also what to expect from the new expansion. What it allows you to do is to play over the earlier movies, but using the full mechanics of the game. So you'll be able to use your Hogwarts dice, you'll be able to use the encounters, which are sort of a new facsimile of the Horcrux mechanic, and you've got new stuff like these detention cards that'll be added to your deck, and the banishing cards that take cards out of the decks. But let me tell you, box 1, I haven't opened box 2, 3, or 4 yet because I haven't done it. I haven't managed to defeat it. But I'll be back tomorrow with my friends Leanne and Manon to take a go at box 1 and see if we can get through it and unlock box 2. So I hope you'll come back and join us for Harry Potter Hogwarts Battle starting tomorrow. And thanks for watching, everybody.